Have you noticed that the temperature of our disagreements has changed? I don't mean the content of the arguments, taxes, healthcare, abortion, immigration. I mean the feeling of them. 10 or 15 years ago, a political disagreement might have felt like a headache. It was annoying. Maybe it ruined a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas get together. But today, it feels different. Today, a political disagreement feels like a threat. It feels like a war. If you felt like the person across the aisle isn't just wrong, but is actually dangerous or even evil, you aren't crazy and you aren't alone. We are living through a massive psychological shift in how human beings relate to one another. And the data shows that we are currently living in the coldest era of American history. Let's look at the data. Sociologists use a tool called the feeling thermometer. It's very simple. They ask voters to rate their feelings toward the opposing party on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being very cold and 100 is very warm. In the 1970s, the average score for the other side was about 48 degrees. That's lukewarm. It means I don't agree with you, but I can tolerate you. It's a relationship of respectful disagreement. Today, that score has plummeted to 20 degrees. That is the temperature of hostility. We now view opponents with the same level of distrust we historically reserved for social deviants or enemies of the state. This phenomenon is called affective polarization. And here is the crucial part. It has almost nothing to do with policy. Historically, we had ideological polarization. For example, we disagreed on how to spend money. But today, the gap in policy hasn't actually widened that much for the average person. What has widened is the emotional chasm. We have shifted from viewing politics as a debate over resources to viewing it as a cosmic battle between good and evil. Why? Why the sudden freeze? Because we have moved the battlefield. We have migrated our public life into a space designed for trench warfare dynamics. When you think about what a trench actually is, it isn't a meeting place. It's a defensive fortification designed for survival. And online, we build these trenches using 3 specific tools. First, we dig the hole using social sorting. Decades ago, your identities were mixed. You might be a conservative union member or a liberal churchgoer. And these cross-cutting identities acted as bridges across no man's land. But today, we have sorted ourselves perfectly. If I know how you vote, I can probably guess where you shop, what you watch, and where you live. Second, we reinforce the walls with enclave deliberation. That's the academic term for what happens when you only talk to people who agree with you. The data shows that when a group agrees, they don't just stay the same, they race to the edge. You have to be more pure, more angry, more right than the person next to you to signal your loyalty. And this creates epistemic hubris, the unearned certainty that you are a genius and those other people are morons. And finally, the goal changes. In a debate, the goal is persuasion. In a trench, the goal is attrition. And this is what scholars call negative partisanship. The data shows that for the first time in history, out-party hate is a stronger psychological motivator than in-party love. You stop caring about your own team's victory and start obsessing over the other team's destruction. In the physical world, communities were forced to coexist. You couldn't block your neighbor. You had to see them at the grocery store, the union hall, or the church. These third places enforced a ceasefire. You had to be civil because you had to see them tomorrow. But those places are vanishing, and they've been replaced by the virtual third place, the internet. We aren't voting for a vision of the future. We are voting against the existential threat across the field. So we are dug in, and we are freezing, and we are waiting for the order to attack. The year is 1914, December, the Western Front. We often picture this event as a fairy tale, but the reality was gritty, terrifying and cold. Bruce Bairnsfather, a British machine gunner, described his reality in a memoir. He wasn't sitting in a trench, he was crouching in a horrible clay cavity in Belgium, 3 feet wide and 3 feet deep. He was covered in mud, miles from home, surviving on stale biscuits and cigarettes that were too wet to light. At 10 p.m., the noise started. Bairnsfather listened. It wasn't artillery, it was singing. Across the field, the Germans were singing carols, Stille Nacht, Silent Night. In the darkness, the British soldiers began to sing back. Then a voice called out across no man's land. It was a German soldier speaking in broken English. "Come over here." This is the moment of maximum danger. In 1914, no man's land was a kill zone. You didn't walk into it, you died in it. A British sergeant yelled back a counter offer. "You come halfway and I come halfway." Enemy soldiers began to climb nervously out of their holes. This wasn't an official order. In fact, the generals were horrified. This was a spontaneous eruption of humanity. They met in the middle and they didn't shoot. Men who had been trying to kill each other hours before were now shaking hands. They were trading tobacco and wine. One German soldier, a schoolteacher, wrote in his diary that the English brought a soccer ball from their trenches, and pretty soon a lively game ensued. One British soldier even set up a makeshift barber shop in the mud, charging Germans a few cigarettes for a haircut. Now, not everyone was happy about this. A young 25-year-old German soldier scolded his comrades, asking, "Have you no German sense of honor left?" That soldier's name was Adolf Hitler. But for the vast majority, the hate simply evaporated. As Lieutenant Zemisch wrote, "Thus Christmas, the celebration of love, managed to bring mortal enemies together as friends for a time." Why? How does the enemy become the friend in a single night? Because the trench creates the monster, but proximity reveals the man. Here is the uncomfortable truth about our current moment. We are lonely, we are anxious, and we have lost the places where we used to meet. Third places, the churches, the union halls, the bowling leagues, they're gone. So we've retreated into the digital trench. The problem with the digital trench is that it is infinite. You can scroll forever and never see the eyes of the person you hate. You can block them, you can dehumanize them. The internet is efficient at transmitting information, but it is terrible at transmitting grace. The data shows us that our politics is now driven by negative partisanship. We are more motivated by hatred of the other than love for our own. And that is the mindset of the trench. But the parable of 1914, proximity, teaches us that the only way to break the spell is to cross no man's land. We have to rehumanize the enemy. And you cannot do that in a comment section, and you cannot do that on social media. The truce only happens in real life because real life is inconveniently complex. In the trench, your enemy is a cardboard cutout of evil. But in the third place, the guy with the lawn sign you hate is also the guy who helped jumpstart your car in the freezing rain. That contradiction is a glitch in the matrix of polarization, and it forces your brain to switch from war mode to neighbor mode. You cannot hate someone whose story you know. And you can't know their story if you're never in the same room. I want to be clear, I'm not saying you have to agree. The soldiers in 1914 eventually went back to fighting, but they fought differently. They fought with the knowledge that the other side was human. If you feel exhausted by the anger, if you feel that 20-degree freeze in your soul, my challenge to you is this: log off, go somewhere real. Join a club, a church, a volunteer group, somewhere that forces you to be around people you didn't choose. Climb out of the trench. You might be surprised at who you meet in the middle. If you want to map patterns and discover parables in this noisy world, subscribe to this channel. I want to leave you with a question. Share your answers in the comments below. What is one third place? Maybe it's a coffee shop, a park, a gym, or you still feel a sense of community with strangers. I look forward to reading about the third places that you frequent. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll see you in the next one. Grace and peace.